Welcome back. Throughout the show today, we've been honoring the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and how we can still learn from his words and his actions. Founder of Texas Center for African American Living History, Naomi Mitchell Carrier, is joining us now by Zoom to share her perspective. Naomi, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
It is great to see you. Let's talk a little bit about you before we get into tips to help our young people understand the significance of the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You're also an author and playwright. You wrote and composed the renowned historical musical I Am Annie Mae. So you have a deep connection to Black history here in Houston.
Here in Houston, here in Texas, my home state.
So talk to us about this Texas Center for African American Living History. What does the center do, and why did you found it back in 1998? I know there was a name change in 2007.
We founded our company to secure the mission of documenting, researching, interpreting, and preserving African American history in Texas from an African American perspective. And most of my work has been centered around getting the archive information from various historic sites like Brazoria County Historical Museum, Sam Houston Museum, and using that documented information to turn it into living history theater that we have reenacted. So my book, Go Down Old Hannah, The Living History of African American Texans, spotlights 15 of those reenactments.
That is incredible.
They concentrate on celebrations, running away, Civil War, Reconstruction. We tried to cover the history of African American Texans in those various periods.
And Naomi, we're lucky that there are so many firsthand accounts out there of the civil rights movement, of segregation, integration that happened in the 1960s. Let's talk about today and our young people, because it seems like, unless you lived through something personally, sometimes it's more difficult to translate a message to younger people. So how do we talk to our young people about the significance of MLK Day?
The significance of MLK Day is synonymous with the importance of voting rights in a democracy, and we're facing a crisis about that today. I like to talk to young people about some of my personal experiences. For example, on April 4th, 1968, I was a senior student at the University of North Texas. It was a spring evening, and those of us who had formed the first and only African American organization on that campus were headed to our weekly meeting only to learn that at 6:05 p.m. on Thursday, April 4th, 1968, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot dead while standing on a balcony outside his second-floor room at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. So what did we do? The next day on Friday morning, our officers secured an appointment with the university president and requested that classes be canceled on Monday, April the 8th, in honor of our fallen hero. The request was granted. There was no outbreak of violence, just peaceful demonstrations of sadness and disappointment for which we were shown some respect. I'm not sure we would have that same amount of respect today. This is 2022.
Wow. Well, that's an incredible recounting of the events of that day.
As a music teacher, and before that, I was the church musician, I grew up playing patriotic songs in public audiences, and God Bless America was and still is my favorite song. My prayers for our democracy are daily. They are continually in my mouth. I pray for the country. I ask God to bless America, to bless our president, President Biden. Given the cards he was given when he became president, he does need our prayers. I learned that right was better than wrong and truth is better than lies. I grew up knowing this, and it's still true. So to stand complacently by and watch the death of democracy, of the greatest country on earth, we have to heal our country. That is the fierce urgency of now. My favorite quote by Dr. Martin Luther King. And I will finally say that healing begins with reparations. I was given this brick in 2008 by a white woman who apologized to me for slavery by saying, Naomi, I am sorry for what my people did to your people. I began to cry. She began to cry. Everybody in the room began to cry. And I learned from that moment that the healing of trauma can only begin with some reparations and some apologies. And so I offer that to young people who want to know, what should we do about America's uncomfortable history? We need to apologize for that. We need to come to grips with that. We need to learn what it was. We need to repair. We need to heal. And we need to love. That is the significance of this day, to heal our country in a democratic way, the same way that Martin Luther King did. He was the recipient of the Nobel Prize for Peace. I pray for peace.
Very well said. Well, these are pretty impactful quotes here. The time is always right to do what is right. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. One of my favorites, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Naomi Mitchell Carrier, thanks so much for your time and for your perspective as well.